The verdict of guilty on all 34 counts was handed down against this corrupt son of a bitch. I'm sure you've heard all sorts of commentaries and opinions about what it means for the country, yada, 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 yada. I don't know really how much I can add that wouldn't be unnecessary repetition, but I'll have a few things to say. Donald Trump is an out-of-control criminal. He is a fascist criminal, and he has the backing of a bunch of insane religious nutcases behind him, all of which adds up to a very, very, very dangerous situation in this country for all of us. And Trump will not hold anything back. I mean, he was slapped in a way he had never been slapped before yesterday. Pardon the expression, but he was bitch slapped. He was just like he treats women. He was backed up against the wall and had the shit kicked out of him by a jury, a prosecutor, a judge, and he just can't handle it. So there is going to be a reaction, even a further reaction. This guy is an ominous existential threat to the country. And we better understand that fully, and we better make sure that the son of a bitch does not get control of the presidency again. If he does, well, if he does, then everything comes to a screaming halt. A couple of comments from yesterday. Despite all his loudmouth bullshit about the process itself, the convicted felon Donald Trump apparently confided to his advisors that one juror in the criminal trial would come to his rescue. I don't know what he saw or what he thought he saw. But Rolling Stone reported yesterday that Trump's hopes of a man on the jury he reportedly referred to as, Trump called him, quote, my juror, end quote. Those hopes were, well, dumped. Reporters for Rolling Stone wrote that Trump had his eye on one male juror in particular whose body language he interpreted as friendly, more so, of course, than the rest of the people on the jury. Anyway, the two writers at Rolling Stone put this in their article, quote, body language from the juror throughout the trial, studied closely by the former president's counselors, led some to believe that that juror was warming to the defense's views. The warm smiles and tics, they hoped, suggested that there could be a hung jury that would help Trump evade conviction, end quote. Now, it's no news to you or to me that the entire defense case was based on not defending Trump and demolishing the case of the prosecution. There was no way they could do that. But it was hoping for a hung jury. All they needed, as we've been told over and over and over and over again, all they needed was one juror of the 12 who would refuse to vote guilty. That's all they needed, which would have given them a hung jury, which would have given them a mistrial, which would have brought the whole thing to a crashing stop. Well, surprise, surprise, that's not what happened. Now, it's not known right now which juror that the orange vomit was referring to and that the Trump team was referring to, as they scrutinize those 12 jurors to see which one might be weakening in the obvious approach that the prosecution was laying out, that Trump was as guilty as hell. And according to Rolling Stone, it could have been juror number 2, who was an investment banker who said during the, what is it called, voir dire process, when they interview people for the jury, that his primary source of news was Truth Social. His primary source of news? And this guy made it onto the jury. Well, okay, that's the way our system works. The prosecution could have struck him for no, didn't have to give any cause, just get out of here. But they let him on. Truth Social. It also could have been, according to Rolling Stone, it could have been juror number 8, who's a retired wealth manager from the Upper East Side, originally from Long Island, which is traditionally more conservative, than the rest of the New York metro area, right? So there's two. However, as the Stone reported, once jury deliberations began, Trump and his team reportedly began to lose hope. One advisor told Rolling Stone, quote, "I think the juror is going to get beat up in the jury room," end quote, the one who might have been sympathetic to the criminal bastard Donald Trump. And according to these reports that have no basis in no way to prove whether they're right or speculation or just out of writer's imagination, but they were also worried, Trump's team was also worried about, quote, how strong this individual juror's resolve would be around the other 11 members who were charged with finding the son of a bitch guilty or not guilty. But anyway, the fact that what Trump was hoping for, and I guess what his lawyer, oh my God, boy, that guy ought to run and hide. What they were hoping for was an acquittal on all 34 counts. Well, that would have been goddamn impossible, given that Trump he's never prevailed in any civil case and now a criminal case in New York. But the defense was hopeful that maybe, possibly, at least one or more jurors would refuse to sign on to a guilty verdict, thus giving the corrupt orange vomit what he wanted. A hung jury so he could stand out in the hallway of the courthouse in Midtown Manhattan and screech and fart and wheeze about how, well, see, I'm innocent, you bastard. So anyway, after the jury delivered the unanimous verdict early yesterday evening, a different Trump advisor told the two writers for Rolling Stone that, quote, the Trump juror wasn't Trumpy enough, I guess. End quote. Trumpy. Oh, yeah, I can laugh now. But we are faced now with a situation that carries with it the potential of absolute, utter, complete, total violence in this country. I don't need to keep repeating that. I think you are fully aware of what this orange son of a bitch has injected into the bloodstream of democracy in this country. He is a virus. He is a vicious force, something that the framers never anticipated would happen. Something that, forget the framers, something that down through the 2.5 centuries since we became independent from Britain, nobody ever figured that somebody as corrupt and such a liar and a grifter and a thug as Donald Trump would ever get the kind of power that the presidency of the United States grants. Now, you can't blame Trump. Trump is what he is. He's a fucking animal beast. And no offense to animals, but he really is. He's just a violent-prone, psychopathic son of a bitch. Come on. All right. Enough name calling, right, Malloy? That's what he is. So as far as any hope, any possible chance that he might pull back his bullshit during the next 5 months is crazy. Not only is he not going to pull it back, he's going to increase it. Judge Merchan has scheduled the sentencing hearing for July 11th, 10 o'clock in the morning. And that will take place less than a week before the Republican National Convention kicks off in Milwaukee, where they had a big issue about guns the other day, but I talked about it yesterday. Now, Merchan could sentence this orange murderer to as much as 4 years in prison. But you know, he's also a first-time offender. Not really, but he's a first-time offender in the light of being convicted of anything. Trump is a serial offender. You know that as well as I do. It's just that he's always managed to skate away from any kind of responsibility. So he's a first-time offender. The son of a bitch is 78 years old, and this is a Class E felony conviction, all 34 of them, A, B, C, D, E. It's the lowest felony conviction in the criminal justice system in the state of New York, I've been told. And it doesn't require incarceration. On the other hand, Trump has showed what Andrew Weissman on CNN, former federal prosecutor, what he's called, quote, a complete lack of remorse. By the way, he repeatedly violated Merchan's gag order. And Mr. Weissman said yesterday on MSNBC after the verdict that the judge may choose to throw the son of a bitch in jail based on his behavior throughout the trial and his refusal not only to admit culpability after the verdict was announced, but to then say that the judge and the jury and the whole system, everything was corrupt and rigged, like he always says. And then that parade of Christian fascist devils like Marco Polo Rubio and J.D. Vance and who's the son of a bitch from Texas. I mean, these people who use our system of governance to get elected and then turn around and try to destroy the criminal justice or the system of justice, the system that our democracy works on. One person, one vote. No one's above the law. We're all held responsible for our actions. That only works if it's levied, those charges are levied against Democrats, according to these people. Anti-Trump attorney George Conway, you remember his wife was a lying press representative for Trump. But Conway, one of the founders of the Lincoln Project, this morning got into an angry confrontation with a Christian fascist operative on CNN, a guy named Scott Jennings. And Conway was, what caused the argument, Conway was talking about the response to the Orange Bastard's multiple felony convictions. And during an appearance on CNN, Conway slapped down Republican claims that Trump is a victim. Victim! He's a victim of a political prosecution. What Conway did was he laid out how Trump's actions led to him becoming a convicted felon. Now, this is what the Christian fascists will not allow anyone in the country, if they had their way, to accept. That it wasn't the judge, it wasn't George Soros, it wasn't President Biden, it was Trump. Trump. The convicted goddamn felon. Trump did these actions. Trump committed the fraud. Trump got involved in corrupting the electoral system in 2016. Trump. He's the one who did it. Anyway, Conway said, quote, I mean, if you don't want to be found guilty of falsifying business records as a felony, don't sleep with the porn star. Don't lie about it. Don't pay her off. Don't cover up the payment. Don't cover up the payment in the middle of a presidential campaign. End quote, George Conway. Well, yeah, everything in that sentence is absolutely right on, true. I mean, what else are you going to say? But not to the filth in Trump world, not to these MAGA bastards. To them, their Lord and Savior, Donald Jesus Trump, is the be-all, end-all of bringing fascism to this country, which is what they want. These Republican Christian fascist devils know that when everything is equal, they cannot win an election. They cannot, because they're incapable. Excuse me. Oops, where did that come from? They're incapable of governance. I mean, that's been proven since when? Well, I guess since forever with Republican office holders. They can scream and yell and make noises and accuse people of being communists and this and that and the other thing, although that doesn't even hold anymore. But they cannot govern. So because they cannot govern, because the people of this country recognize that, they have to cheat, lie, and steal to get into office, which is what they've been doing. And with Trump in the presidency, after this next election, it gives everybody not just a get out of jail free pass, it gives everybody a permanent position in whatever government post they hold. Representatives of the Christian Fascist Party, senators of the Christian Fascist Party, Supreme Court justice who are Nazis. I mean, they're there for the rest of until Trump dies or there's a bloody revolution in this country or a civil war, whatever you want to call it. That's what we're faced with. And then back to George Conway on CNN, he turned his attention to the crimes that Trump committed, the crimes for which he's been found guilty. And this is what Conway said, quote, if you don't want to be indicted for overthrowing the Constitution, don't start a coup. If you don't want to be indicted for stealing classified documents and obstructing justice, don't take the classified documents. When the government asks for it back, give them back. If the FBI serves you with a search warrant, don't hide the documents and don't lie about it, and don't have your lawyers lie about it. This isn't that hard. Donald Trump is not the victim here. End quote, George Conway. No, Donald Trump is not the victim here. I would feel secure in saying that Donald Trump has never been a victim in any charges ever brought against him for anything. He's a son of a bitch who sets up a charity to aid children and then steals the money. He's a son of a bitch that puts out a phony university scam to take money from people and then has it dissolved and has to return it. He's a crazy, crazy, grifting, lying, thieving scum. And yet, 70 million people voted for him in 2020. 70 million. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.